In the middle of the controversy over President Trump's summit with Russian President Putin, the White House dropped a new bombshell.
That's right. It says President Putin has been invited to visit Washington this fall. As KCAL9 political reporter Dave Bryan shows us, that announcement left some administration insiders surprised, we should say.
Yeah,
right?
And that's a kind way to put it, right? You know, sometimes in politics, timing is everything. And this looks like one of those times. After 3 days of bitter charges and fiery debate over President Trump's statements at the Helsinki summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, the White House announced today that the president is inviting Putin to follow up a follow-up summit in Washington. But tonight, the timing of that offer is, you've heard this before, pouring more gasoline on the political fire.
The White House has announced on Twitter that Vladimir Putin is coming to the White House in the fall.
Say that again?
Director of National Intelligence Chief Dan Coats may be laughing, but for the intelligence community, this is no laughing matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be special.
The White House confirmed the move this morning. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders tweeting, President Trump asked National Security Advisor John Bolton to invite President Putin to Washington in the fall, and those discussions are already underway. But announcing a second one-on-one meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the midst of 3 days of national controversy and heated debate about President Trump's statements, poo-pooing the pile of intelligence reports about Russian meddling in the 2016 election, even has some Republicans scratching their heads, like South Carolina GOP Congressman Mark Sanford, who said this on CNN.
But I literally had a friend of mine send me a Photoshop picture of Putin in black S&M gear, if you will, walking his dog, and in this case the dog was Trump, on a leash. And what has struck everybody in the wake of the Helsinki conference was the degree to which the president, who can be bombastic and strong and forceful, was absolutely compliant and deferential to Putin.
And in Congress on Thursday, there was pandemonium when Democrat Congressman Steny Hoyer gave a fiery speech on a Russia-related issue and the reaction to it.
The gentleman's time has expired.
You have the opportunity to do that today. Do so. Vote yes on this amendment for your country.
The new invitation for another Putin summit comes at a time when there are still plenty of unanswered questions about exactly what was said in the room between the two presidents at their first Helsinki summit. 3 days after Helsinki, in a stunning revelation, even National Intelligence Director Dan Coats said he still has no idea. Clueless about what was said, what may have been agreed upon, and no idea about the coming invitation for a second summit in Washington, as he told Andrea Mitchell at a security forum in Aspen, Colorado.
Well, you're right. I don't know what happened in that meeting. I think as time goes by, and the president has already mentioned some things that happened in that meeting, I think we will learn more. But that is the president's prerogative. If you had asked me how that ought to be conducted, I would have suggested a different way.
So even the Director of National Intelligence is still in the dark. And the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, told the Aspen Security Summit Thursday that the meddling in the 2016 election was just the beginning, not the end of Russian interference, even though President Trump still doesn't appear to be buying that.
The Russian effort to influence the 2016 presidential campaign is just one tree in a growing forest. Focusing merely on a single election misses the point. They are meant to undermine democracy on a daily basis, regardless of whether it is election time or not. Russian intelligence officers did not stumble on the idea of hacking American computers and posting misleading messages because they had a free afternoon. It's what they do every day.
President Trump was out making his case Thursday in an interview with CNBC, where he launched his daily attack on President Obama and claimed he, Trump, doesn't get enough credit for punishing Russia for their misdeeds.
Look at the sanctions I've put on. Look at the diplomats I threw out. Look at all of the things that I've done. Nobody else did what I've done. Obama didn't do it. Obama was a patsy for Russia. He was a total patsy. Getting along with President Putin, getting along with Russia is a positive, not a negative. Right. Now, with that being said, If that doesn't work out, I'll be the worst enemy he's ever had. The worst he's ever had.
Still, the questions persist. Would the Washington summit, expected to be set for some time this fall, happen before or after the midterm elections, which the intelligence community believes Russia is already trying to influence? Some lawmakers argue it may be too soon for a second summit.
It's clear that Mr. Trump was not prepared for the first. Certainly he was not prepared for his news conference. Let's make sure that we understand what was done in Helsinki before we have another meeting here of the presidents.
Now, tonight, the Washington Post is reporting Trump advisors were in an uproar over the interview at that security forum with the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, part of which we just saw in that report. One anonymous White House official told the Post Coats has gone rogue, appearing to be laughing at the president, they said, and playing to his audience of the intellectual elite in a way that was sure to infuriate President Trump. So we could have more turmoil over this, within the White House.
Yep, for sure. Now, Dave, you mentioned the private meeting at the Helsinki summit. So far, the Trump administration, they haven't released any information about what was said there privately.
Right.
Have we heard anything from Russia?
Well, there is one report coming out just tonight about this. It's on Bloomberg.com. They're reporting that Vladimir Putin delivered a speech to Russian diplomats behind closed doors, but some information about this summit was leaked. Bloomberg says Putin told the diplomats that he made a new offer to President Trump at the summit about how to proceed in Ukraine, a divided country. Putin's proposal is to hold a referendum in Ukraine to help resolve the conflict. But the U.S. and European Union have repeatedly accused Russia of sending troops and weapons to support separatists in Ukraine, and Putin's proposal would alarm Ukrainian officials. Putin said President Trump asked him not to discuss that referendum idea at the post-summit news conference to give U.S. officials some time to consider the referendum idea. Juan, Crystal, back to you.
All right.